request Greg to please come up to the stage. Also request Ms. Divya Agarwal, Leadership and CXO Hiring Consultant and Advisor at Trians, ex-Oracle, Gartner, Red Hat, and our very own Mr. Avijit Bhattacharya, CHRO, Tata Capital Limited, to join Greg on stage.
Check. Just checking for if you can hear me loud and clear. Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Urvashi, for that warm welcome. It is indeed a privilege to be here amongst, you HR leaders, and to be a part of this panel on harnessing AI's potential for talent acquisition. It is a topic that is very close to me, thanks to the work that we've done at Hunar.ai. And Hunar is a recruitment automation solution specifically for frontline workforce, so more about that later. Gosh, ever since OpenAI made ChatGPT public, the chatter around AI has been through the roof. And I guess it's the first time that people like you and I have had access to AI, which is not narrow in nature, but it's a general AI. And hence, there are countless conversations around how AI will displace jobs, how AI will disrupt functions and industries. And I guess talent acquisition isn't immune from, potential disruption that AI might bring. And I'm very excited to have this conversation with the two of you. Let me first introduce the panel, and I want to start off with you, Divya. So Divya Agarwal is currently a strategic advisor to several diverse sets of organizations to build and streamline their executive and leadership talent management process. She is a highly sought after HR strategy and transformation leader with over 15 years of diverse industry experience, leading talent acquisition for organizations like VMware, Oracle, Red Hat, Capgemini, Gartner, and InfoEdge. In her previous role, Divya was the country head for executive talent acquisition and management at Gartner Research and Advisory. She is an avid traveler and a thought leader on topics such as digital HR transformation, managing emotional turbulence during such transformations, the importance of empathy, diversity and inclusion, etc., etc. Divya, I look forward to you and hearing from you on how AI is going to change specifically leadership hiring. Next, Avijit. Avijit Bhattacharya is currently the Chief Human Resources Officer at Tata Capital, where he was also incidentally one of the founding members. Having joined the Tata Group way back in 1996, over the course of the last 27 years, he's had multiple stints across businesses and functions with Tata Motors, Tata Capital. He is an alumnus of the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, and an engineer from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. Welcome, Avijit. Look forward to having this conversation with you. I want to start off with a set of introductory comments from both of you on the state of the art of AI today. And Avijit, specifically, if you could just touch on the evolution of technology in talent acquisition. I want to start off with you, Divya.
Yeah. Hi, is it audible?
Yeah.
Thanks, Greg. So I think we've been discussing in the session since morning that, that definitely the entire gamut of HR is evolving with AI coming into picture, and not only AI, with the kind of technology disruptions that we are having, it is certainly evolving. And I think it is going to get even more complex and interesting at the same point of time. Imagine from a TS standpoint, we will have some AI-generated job descriptions, which in turn will have an AI-generated resumes to kind of match those job descriptions. And then we'll have an AI-powered assessment tool to assess those candidates. And again, a technology-driven candidate engagement and an onboarding plan. So definitely, technology is going to disrupt, and it's going to get even more interesting. Just to kind of cite some numbers, I feel that as per the Deloitte survey, if I read right, 63% of the organizations are still contemplating to kind of implement technology and in the HR function. And I think 20% of that is in the TA space. And the buzz is already there. It's going to get interesting from there.
First, thanks, Greg, and a very good afternoon to everyone, and thanks to CII for giving us an opportunity to be here today. So just touching on the question Greg threw at us is about how we have seen technology evolve. What I have seen of talent acquisition is it started with obviously looking at physical resumes sourced through networks, either of consultants or other friends and our own recruiters, moving to keyword searches on online sites, to parsers who could pick out phrases. And so the thing has all evolved using basically technology to assess what that resume is trying to tell us. And now we have come to a stage where we have tools to understand that resume, not just in terms of words, but in terms of sense. So broadly, the talent, and the other place where technology has slowly crept in is how we engage with candidates throughout the entire cycle of acquisition. There are other pieces to this also as to when they come in, what development inputs need to go in. But I think they go beyond the realm of acquisition at the moment. And so summing, it's basically from pure physical paper to now most of it assisted by a software tool which can tell us who is a better or right fit.
Lovely. I think some really interesting thoughts already. So right from AI generated job descriptions, Vijit, you touched upon AI and technology broadly, eliminating a lot of the manual effort from talent acquisition. I want to now break down talent acquisition specifically into a couple of things that you touched about, which is screening or sourcing for candidates, and also about the engagement process of it, both of which traditionally have had a lot of manual effort involved. And I want to touch specifically because you lead the CHRO function for Tata Capital, which also has a large frontline workforce. I want to understand how technology helps you in acquiring this frontline workforce very specifically.
Well, so just to give you a little context, like most retail or financial services companies, we have a large frontline workforce or feet on street, and it is characterized by high turnover. So it's a highly competitive labor market there and high turnover population. So the challenge here is to recruit a person who produces, basically keeps up the productivity and also stays with the organization. So that's really the challenge, and the recruitment has to happen quite fast because we need the person on board as quickly as possible, otherwise it hits the sales numbers or some other operational numbers. Now in this scenario, where we can use, in fact before I get into where we can use, we at Tata Capital had tried to use a data model and we used some past data because we had a good amount of data, or at least we thought it was good amount of data, to create a model where we used to take every candidate, and this was almost 60 to 70 variables, to assess whether the person will satisfy these two. That is, will be productive and will stay long enough with the company to kind of, sort of serve the purpose for which the recruitment has happened. So we used to put the data of the candidate that we are screening through this model and come up with a score. Anyone above a threshold score was supposed to be a good hire. So we used this model for some time, but after a while we discontinued it. The reason why we discontinued it is because the model was not really discerning. It was not really separating. I mean, it did not really matter what the score was. That is one observation. And second, the manager for whom the person was hired really did not have much trust in the model. And this was a challenge, so we discontinued it. We're looking at something more now. But this model had discrete points in data, which was picked up from the resume of the candidate. Going forward, what we are trying to explore is a model or basically a tool which can parse, and this was there in the previous session, where you can parse this resume and understand it semantically, what that person is trying to say, like we associate skills. So a resume lists us what the person has done. So I have done this in this company. I have done this in another company. Translating that into a skill, which we heard by tagging or some other means, is the challenge. So we have to translate what has been done into a skill, create create a repository of it, and use it to identify people quickly as to whether the skill set is right for the job role that we're hiring for. This obviously can speed up screening, speed up hiring, and give options to the manager for hiring. We are not saying that the AI tool will make the decision, but they will basically come up with a short list that these are the candidates you can look at. Therefore, basically, funneling, the funneling process, the time to funnel goes down.
Got it. I think one very interesting thing was that you did try something, but Avijit, it didn't really work out for you. I'm just curious, and I want to double click on that specifically. What do you think were some of the things that may have been missing, that may have led to it not really working out?
My take is that we didn't have enough data. I mean, we heard in the previous session that there were a few lakhs of data,
Yes.
resumes. We don't have that kind of a size.
Structured, yes.
So it's, the model has to be trained on data. And I mean, we are a 15-year-old company. I don't think we have enough back-end data to train the model
Got
for
it.
the right decision.
Perfect. I get that. I completely understand, and I appreciate that models need billions of parameters of structured data. Divya, I want to come to you. I want you to contrast leadership hiring for me. Avijit touched upon frontline hiring. How is it different when you're looking at CXO hiring, and how does AI play a role there?
See, even before that, right, I think the trick here for a successful implementation of technology will be to really understand the where and the why, right? Doesn't mean that if we have a technology intervention in place and we just kind of leverage it and we'll be successful. So, I mean, contrasting, around, I would not use the word contrasting, but, that this is where, we need to be really mindful of the implementation of technology. When it comes to CXO leadership hiring, we can't just evade the human touch and the intuitiveness an individual will bring in. So imagine a big pyramid, right? So this is how the philosophy works. The bottom of the pyramid is where the technology interventions will be mostly required. For example, in kind of getting away with those repetitive tasks of, kind of screening those thousands of resumes for maybe frontline workers or initial people, workers in the initial level of the hierarchy, doing some maybe, for example, production support, call center, calling jobs, screening jobs. So, this is something that, of course, technology we can implement at a way wherein the idea is behind to screen. The moment we move up the pyramid, the intervention of technology has to be really, really mindful. And if I can use the word, it will be very minimal as the scenario currently is. So I would say that it's more of intuitive power that is going to be required. For example, you talk about personality profiling. We can't really rely on a machine to do a personality profiling for a leader that is going to come in the organization. And let's all be honest about it. Somebody who's coming at a leadership level, one wrong hire is going to involve a lot of high stakes there. So I think a mindful implementation of technology can also be done there in different aspects. Like, for example, in Abhijit's case, it was more around screening and maybe a bit around assessments as well. However, over here, it will be more around, if I can say around, maybe say employer branding. Tying it back to what Greg mentioned, right, around candidate engagement. When we engage the candidate, when we engage that limited set of pool of profiles that we have in the market for that leadership level, we are constantly, for example, communicating. An automated machine is actually communicating with that candidate or that limited set of profiles, giving the updates that, hey, this is what my success story in the organization is, or this is a job role that probably might be open up because, this is the way we are progressing. That is, what is going to kind of create an engagement with the candidate, in turn kind of help in the employer branding. We can also talk about benchmarking. For example, we can do a lot of compensation benchmarking surveys through this automated chatbot to kind of get that data, and then we can sit and analyze that and understand that. So, it is, like I said, it is the where and the how part which is going to really make a difference in the technology implementation.
I like that point that you mentioned around employer branding. A lot of people actually discount the role that the employer brand has. And actually that leads me to the next question that I want to have, and it's around engagement. Very specifically, and Avijit, I want to come to you on this. In the front line, and some of the numbers that we've seen at our customers is typically get about a 1% conversion rate, which is if you want to hire 50 people, you at least interact with 5,000 profiles. And potentially for a strong employer brand like Tata Capital, you get many more applicants. How does technology help you in engaging with such a large pool of applicants and narrowing that funnel down to a set of relevant and qualified and interested people?
Well, one is transactional in terms of how do I engage with the potential candidate, which is, and especially at the front line of the junior management, is about asking for documents, asking for certain details, and these can all be shifted to chatbots. And chatbots today can be personalized for these transactions. We have not yet deployed it, but we are kind of exploring whether this can, we are in the process of developing it. We have internal chatbots for internal employee engagement, but for external candidate, we have still not deployed it. In fact, one thing about chatbots is, which Shiv also mentioned in his presentation, is that employees may like the high tech, but they still want to talk to some person. So they do need that high touch, and we have been experiencing it. And I think even candidates would behave the same way. If they have an opportunity, they'd like to talk to the recruiter. The other is about figuring out whether the candidate, so one is the screening and selection of the candidate. The second is to keep the candidate engaged till the person joins. And that is when we see dropout rates. Now we can have enough data which can tell who has the higher propensity to drop out, and therefore a higher need for engagement, and at what level the engagement has to be. And this analysis or this is a input which AI models can give the recruiters as to the intensity of engagement that needs to be done with potential candidates till they have joined. And I see value here.
Got it.
Because the efficiency of recruitment finally is when the person joins.
Right. And I think one more thing that you mentioned is also around the fact that you need a very fast turnaround. You need onboarding, and you need the entire funnel narrowing process to be extremely quick in turnaround time, because otherwise drop-off rates will just go through the roof. And that's potentially where technology plays a big role.
So another thing which technology helps is that we have a certain time to recruit.
Yes.
Technology helps us screen more in that particular time frame than otherwise it would have.
Absolutely. Great. So I think if I were to just sum up, I think we're yet to fully harness the potential of AI. It's definitely something that we should look forward to. The models are getting there. We will get there with better structured data, with more powerful models, etc. And I want to now look at the future, because that's potentially the most exciting thing for everyone in the room. What does AI in talent acquisition look like in the future is broadly what I want to touch about. And very specifically, Divya, I want to look at this whole thing around potential and hiring for potential. Right now, if I were to look at talent acquisition, you have a JD, you have a bunch of skills that you would want to look for in candidates. You have resumes that convey what that candidate brings to the table. But fundamentally, does AI change the game when you want to look at potential? And can machine learning understand potential a bit better than humans intuitively do? Do you think it's possible? Not.
Tying it back to my earlier point, right? Specifically for CXO leadership hiring, even today, or even in the future, a resume or a particular amount of document is never going to tell as to what the persona or the vision of the person is. What is that he's kind of getting on the table with respect to managing all those ambiguities and the uncertainties that we are facing today. And I'm sure it is going to get, uncertainty, the ambiguity is going to get increased day by day. So I don't think, like I said, right, no matter how sophisticated an ML becomes, it was not definitely going to help in the screening stage for CXO hiring. However, how I see the future where an ML can help in here is basically, identification of the skills that is required in an organization to fill that gap. For example, we all went through some kind of uncertainties in our own organizations, wherein we just didn't know, okay, things were really, I was with InfoEdge, with an organization which has a monopoly in the market to where everybody uses over here who is from TA, everybody uses Naukri.com. Everybody, they have a monopoly in the market. But, everything was so uncertain at that point of time, and that is where change was required. And there we needed leaders who can manage that change, who can bring it that new thought process, who can manage that ambiguity, keeping the business in mind. So, we really thoroughly want a personality profiling or an persona of the individual to be known whenever we hire. So I think that is where ML can help to understand what is the skill gap that is there. And the next part would be to assess those skills. And I mean, it will be really, really great to kind of have ML assess the individual from an overall personality standpoint, maybe from an overall individual standpoint. Like, for example, we all go through recommendations on LinkedIn. We understand what has been the success for that particular individual, right? So what is his social standing? How good is he with respect to his communication with the leaders? How can he kind of, does he really get a seat on the table when he kind of walks in the room? So, these kind of persona-based questions, it will be really helpful if ML kind of get there and kind of, get to that sophisticated level. So again, as we move up in the pyramid, the usage of AI and ML is going to be very, very different compared to a beginner or a frontline salesperson.
Yeah. Avijit, do you want to weigh in on that one?
Yeah. So on this question of potential,
Yeah.
It's interesting because at the end, most recruitment is about assessing what the person has done in the past and whether the person will fit, which is in a way potential assessment. What a normal recruiter usually does is reads the resume as discrete lines. It's not so easy to kind of connect the dots across the different experiences. AI tool can do that well. In fact, we've seen some tools which kind of connect what skill the person has built the first year, second year, then how the skill evolution has happened, and therefore predict what this person can do well. So which is in a way a prediction of potential. This is for external candidates.
Yeah.
Internally, there is a huge candidate pool. In fact, our internal candidates, there is a good amount of data in the HR systems about profiles of our own employees and how they have performed. There is a performance rating available there. There's a performance feedback available from the managers. This data is literally not used. So an AI tool on this data can actually chart out potential for new positions, can also chart career pathways for the existing employees, and open up a very different vista for recruitment, because we usually tend to look outside before looking inside, and internal career places can be built using AI tools and augment the talent acquisition process.
Lovely. I think that's a very, very interesting point. But one question that I would have to that is, the moment you're looking at internal data and the moment you're looking at data that machines and models have access to, fundamentally there is a starting bias, in the sense that when you're looking at today's workforce, the simplest thing that I can say is, for example, women, at least in senior leadership positions, are under-indexed. And when you have such a starting bias in the data that the models are training on, do you think AI potentially just propagates that bias down the line? Do you think that's a risk?
My short answer is yes. It is, we tend to talk about bias in AI. It's an opinion, is that there is some bias implicit in most of the decisions that we as HR take. And that bias is implicit. We don't want to do it, but it happens. And that bias kind of creeps into the data, which is used to train the AI model. So the AI model basically is born with that bias. Now, what we can do is keep a conscious eye on what the AI model is doing and correct it as it goes along. So there is a way to correct it, provided we keep an eye on it. Like as you said, there are certain gender-specific roles. No, sorry, or quote unquote, there is a gender bias.
There's a gender inherent bias, yes.
Which should be removed. There is an age bias, which should be removed.
Absolutely, and I think one of the great examples that I have is frontline sales. And frontline sales, traditionally you'd think a lot of them would be men doing it, but if you're looking at BFSI products and products which are selling a promise, for example, women might actually be much better at men than actually than the data that would suggest.
There is any difference.
Yeah.
But there are, we've grown up with perceptions.
Right. Perfect. Divya, would you want to weigh in on this particular one?
I think in my experience, AI has been helpful in removing one of the biases, and which was a big bottleneck, with removing the biases on the job descriptions that were actually written. For example, unintentionally, a recruiter or the employer branding person used to write, like how we write, the candidate needs to possess XYZ skills. So they used to write, he needs to possess this kind of skills. He needs to have this kind of skills. The person has to be based out of Mumbai or Delhi. You know, these are basically unintentional biases that we had created somehow or the other. So now with the evolvement of AI, you know, it actually catches that, you know, that thing, you know, with respect to the biases, and it removes that. So I think while we are talking about, you know, that there are biases and there are bottlenecks, which I agree. However, we should also respect the fact and appreciate the fact that it is actually also helping us in kind of removing the biases that we unintentionally used to do earlier.
That's right.
It passes on the message also when we're talking so much about diversity in each of our organizations. When the job description is the first thing that goes out in the market when anybody's kind of scouting for an opportunity with your organization, it gives a picture of a very, very diverse culture and an inclusive environment. So I think that is where AI is also helping in removing that bias.
Perfect. And I just go back to, I think, something that Dr. Shivakumar said in the morning, which is around models, and AI needs to first garner that trust in the ecosystem for them to inherently succeed. And Avijit, you, in one of your comments, you said that the managerial team that deployed this model to evaluate candidates had lost that trust.
I would not say lost.
Or
the trust was never built.
The trust was never built. And I just want to look at now two aspects. One is, how do we build this trust, you know, with AI influencing talent acquisition? And second, Divya, I want you to touch on specifically the emotional aspects of it. For example, imagine a candidate that's now being communicated that, hey, this particular algorithm has rejected you. So I want both of you to weigh in on, one, the trust and the emotional aspects of how do we handle a machine dealing some of our outcomes. Abhijit, maybe you'd like to go
I'll take a
first.
stab at it in terms of trust building. What I feel could help is first the person who is going to be benefited by the model,
Yeah.
which is the manager for whom we are hiring the individual, should understand how the model works. So, I mean, there's a term called algorithm literacy. Most of us don't understand that. In fact, I mean, you know, being an engineer, there are different underlyings of how the algorithm works. But at least if in simple language, if one can explain to managers that these are the parameters that the algorithm is looking at, these are the, you know, this is how they're weighing the parameters, then it starts building some kind of confidence in the model. Otherwise, it's a black box. And the second piece, which also Shiv touched on, is that there has to be some kind of a, you know, it should be that the final decision is the manager's. Because, so therefore, AI can be relabeled as assisted intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. So you get a almost cooked, you know, set of candidates, but you point the finger at which one you think is the best.
So AI really enables rather than displacing.
Yeah, it again goes through, you know, it's more for illumination and more for, you know, assisting you rather than totally taking away the work from you.
Absolutely. Fully agree with that. Divya?
Yeah, so, you know, any kind of transformation in any organization is not easy. Change is not easy.
Of course.
Right? Because it all involves a lot of human aspect to it. So as I mean, my favorite way to kind of call it is like a digital emotional HR transformation. That's how I put it across. So the balance here is to really strike around and, you know, tying it back to Abhijit's point, you know, how do you gain the trust of the stakeholders or the business people in question? So, you know, it is basically striking a balance as to what is to be retained, which is already being done, as is in the organization, and what needs to be changed. Not that since technology has come in and we just need to have a very disruptive mindset, okay, fine, now everybody's implementing AI, let's also do that, and, you know, just kind of, that is where I think the initial disruptions fail. So it is basically kind of striking a balance as to what is being retained and what is to be changed. So that is the key here to begin with. And I did kind of read some examples around, you know, the failing of these transformation projects. That is because lack of two things. One, the trust, and second, the accountability. Like, for example, in a sales organization, a vendor will have a different accountability, a different reason to kind of put a transformation structure in place. A sales professional will have a different structure in place. A partner will have a different thing in place. So it's always good to kind of form a core committee of this transformation project, wherein everybody's accountability is really clear. And we are not just, passing on the buck that, okay, fine, this didn't work out because of this reason, and so on and so forth. So basically, earning the trust is going to happen with, kind of generating very positive experiences during this transformation journey. We need to be really, really, however cliche it may sound, but that is how it is, right? When we generate those positive experiences and emotions within the organization during the journey of this transformation, that is where the positive productivity is going to come into picture. So it's very, very important the kind of experience that we give. There has to be a constant communication that is going to happen within the organization as to why do we need to do it. Get buy-ins. If it is okay, you trash something, go back to the whiteboard, do it again. But an initial buy-in is very much required to gain that eventual trust. However, again, a disclaimer, I would definitely kind of say that AI is an enabler, particularly when it comes to my space of working. It is just an enabler and not a decision-making tool, and I don't foresee it happening either.
Precisely.
That answers, Greg.
No, it's a beautiful answer, and I don't think it's an easy topic for anyone to come up with a prescriptive answer because there are so many dimensions involved. So thank you for that. I want to end this with just a picture of the future. I want you to look into the crystal ball and tell me, how is talent acquisition going to be in the future? It's a very open-ended question. What is a recruiter going to look like in the future when you have AI models giving him all these inputs? Divya, you mentioned that it's going to be assistive in nature, but potentially there is going to be a displacement of skill set. You need new skill sets in the job. How can organizations prepare for it? So a lot of questions jumbled into one. I just want your comments of how talent acquisition is going to look like in the future, in the AI-assisted future.
I think be it the CHROs, be it the business, or be it the recruiters, one thing needs to be very clear in the minds is to have a technology ahead mindset. What does that mean? Like we all spoke about, Shiv spoke about that, that all the repetitive tasks are going to go away. What is that we need to do differently to be ahead of that technology? What is the technology cannot do and we can do? That is what the difference is going to be kind of coming into the picture. The recruiters no longer require to, if they really want to be successful, they have to kind of move from a transactional role to an advisory role. That is where, that is what technology is not going to do for you, no matter how evolved it is. So, kind of having that humane touch, having that agility, and, from an organization standpoint, the leaders really need to kind of move from a knowledge environment mindset to a learning environment mindset. Constantly we have to learn, upgrade ourselves, and to be up in the game. Because, it's very loud and clear, right? Technology is going to kind of replace some part of the work which we all do. However, the focus here should be on as to what technology cannot be doing and can't do either, no matter how evolved it is. So how do we kind of be ahead of technology? I think these two things will probably make a difference.
Well, not much to add, except that recruiters will obviously move away from transactional things, as Divya mentioned. There'll be more of trainers. They'll train models. They'll also provide the human touch that, after all, you're recruiting a human being, and you need the human touch. So they will be the, the emotional bridge that brings the person into the organization and keeps them there.
Lovely. I think that's very, very well summarized. I think some snippets of what I really took away. I really like the way you said assistive intelligence instead of artificial intelligence. I think that's a new paradigm for AI altogether. And it's fully applicable in today's enterprise and how you'd apply it. And Divya, you spoke about how a recruiter would evolve from potentially someone who does a lot of things, potentially in a manual way, to maybe more of an advisor, someone who can look at fit and someone who can look at, is this person the right candidate for this job, right? So more of a advisory role and a knowledge-based advisor. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been wonderful panelists. Very, very precise answers. I want to open it up now to the audience. We have about 10 minutes, about 5 minutes of questions. Yes, ma'am. You can use this one.
So thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. We've always been very curious about how the CHROs think about talent hiring and how do they manage their career journey in the organization. My question to you is that we are talking so much about AI and humanizing, harmonizing, human touch. We've also talked, we are in a zone where we are still figuring out the what is probably the AI and how, where, why, and all of that we are still figuring out. And there is a lack of trust as well. We need to build that trust. So my question is, as we are progressing through this, we require a lot of change management in terms of understanding that and being willing to adapt that change, etc. How are the CHROs using AI to manage that change management towards accepting AI and moving on?
Complex question in that how you use AI to manage change brought out by AI. Well, I think most change is being managed by people right now, and I'm thinking right now is that how AI can help is probably giving us cues on where skilling and reskilling is required, because there will be a skill shift. Certain things will go to the AI models, and certain things have to be done by people and done differently. So AI tools can sift through the changes and come up with what skill changes can be done. They can also, we have content which is training content. The AI tools can automatically start assigning content relevant to different people which skills have to be built. So these are the couple of places where AI can help. Alternate, like there is another concept about the silver medalist candidate, that I go for hiring, I choose the first one, but there are others also who are quite relevant, but for a different job role. AI tools can actually refer that to that other job role. Now this actually reduces talent acquisition intensity. So these are areas where AI can actually start, helping in managing change. But let me say, change management is going to be more of a human touch, more about assuaging anxieties, that, then reskilling and building new capabilities. It is mostly going to be a human activity rather than an AI-driven activity. And as you said, AI is at a very, very early stage in deployment, at least in HR functions.
Thank you so much.
Yes, we'll go there.
Yeah, my question is to Abhijit. You said that AI would be used to predict dropouts, to offer candidates.
Yes.
Right. The question is, since these candidates have not yet joined the organization, how will AI as a tool understand and listen to the activities which they are doing and thereby predicting that these candidates are possible dropouts?
It's based on the data of past dropouts, like which organization they're coming from, what position they're coming from, what kind of compensation delta you have given and offered. So, and there are other extraneous data about how hot that particular market is. So there, again, I'm saying that there is a possibility of using AI to find out that there is a propensity for this person to drop out. It is not going, none of the predictions are ever accurate. It's basically a probability of dropout. So wherever there's a higher, like it was happening in IT recruitment a couple of probably 6 months ago. So now that has kind of tapered off. It is coming in something else. So there are like hot skills from the source that candidate is coming in, the stage of career the candidate is in, and other parameters that can be used for predicting. So it's a probability of dropout rather than actual dropout.
Yeah.
Contentious topic in talent acquisition is rising attrition, right? Whether it's because of zero to flat wage growth in last couple of years or its skill gap increasing. And one of the reasons why talent acquisition is becoming a perennial function and not a cyclical function is because of attrition, right? Given your experience, would you mind breaking down what are some of the biggest reasons why, from your perspective, why organizations face such a high attrition in a large workforce? And what are some of the areas where technology can play? You can't really fundamentally drive wage growth because of technology, but are there areas where something can be done to help organizations in driving lower attrition? Is it engagement? Is it better assessment? Is it post-hiring engagement? What, and for the kind of workforce you talked about?
So it's a combination of all that you mentioned. First, the primary source of attrition many of us know is, the interaction between the manager and the individual. Now, in the front line, this data is very difficult to capture. It is basically through, the environment one gets to know whether that is healthy or not healthy. The other parameters which one can see is about performance. If performance is stagnating or tapering off, that's a potential for attrition because the growth for that individual has stopped. Then there are other indicators of attrition is, when the peer set has left. That's another indicator of attrition. Now, attrition happens for multiple reasons, but mostly here, at least in the front line, it is about the next monetary growth rather than anything else because the delta is quite significant in their compensation bands. Now, can AI predict it? Answer is yes. There are ways in which one can figure out that this has a propensity to attrite. What can one do? Intervene either through a stronger engagement or through some other kind of incentive structure that can keep them bound.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I have a question.
We'll take one last question. Thank you.
So a lot of companies at the frontline level do have HR referral programs. And also, I think that is one of the prevalent ways that we do talent acquisition. So do you think AI is going to disregard this thought and we will have better clarity there?
Sorry, could you just repeat that?
So I'm saying that there are a lot of companies at the frontline level which have HR referral programs wherein we hire people at talent acquisition. But AI is also there which gives us a lot of resumes and there is also bias in both the cases. So which do you think is going to impact the referral program, how it is going to be?
So
You're talking particularly for the employee referral program and the biases? Is that the question? Sorry, your voice is a little feeble.
So the question, as far as I understood, and please, I'm paraphrasing, is that potentially there is two types of bias that can arise. One is because referral happens, and referrals is just a function of an adjacency of current workforce, and also AI models which might propagate bias. Is the question around which one, or is it around how do you eliminate both? Sorry, what's the last?
How do you take both hand in hand? That's the question.
Do you look at both hand in hand?
So referral programs will continue to exist because these are all different sources, and referral is another source. Now, the efficacy of a referral program is that you already have a person who is in the company, who understands the culture, and is recommending somebody to come. And therefore, it is assumed that the person has tested the referred candidate for these parameters. Therefore, you're a better fit. So, is that a bias? I think it's a positive bias because, yes, there is a candidate who will better fit in the organization. Will AI model be able to predict a similar candidate? From a performance point of view, yes. Probably from the potential point of view. From the cultural fit point of view, I think there are models which try that, but we don't know how correct or good they are. Because it's a journey. So it's only over time we'll figure out whether the cultural fit prediction was right or wrong.
Thank you.
I guess time will tell as to how well the AI models will shape up for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Abhijit
Thank you,
and
Greg.
Divya.
Thank you
It's
so
been
much.
a fabulous conversation and I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gregory Ipe, Ms. Divya Agarwal, and Mr. Abhijit Bhattacharya for such insightful deliberations. I would like to call Ms. Mallika Mutreja on stage to hand over the token of appreciation to all three of them.